Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 667.
Fearsome Fauna, not sponsored by 2F Spiel.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, we have an unintentional theme of time travel as we discuss Back to the Future, Solarquest, Voltron, and for some reason, GeoCities. Plus, Geoff looks at the future of sports, we answer questions from the mailbag about other things we've done in the past, and then we get wild with our top 10 Fauna games. I'm Eric Summerer, and joining me now, the Dr. Doolittle of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
This is the world of Dr. Doolittle, the wonderful world of... There's now 3 Dr. Doolittle movies, you know?
Okay. I mean, there was the recent one, the Robert Downey Jr. one, and there's like the original musical.
Then there's Eddie Murphy.
Oh, right. Forgot about Eddie Murphy's version.
I don't hate any of them. I like the new... Well, I like the first half of the newest one. I like the musical too, but you know what? I think the book is better, and I know that's the snobby thing to say.
not you know, you have to say it. The book was obviously better.
Yeah. Well, folks, welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Tom Vassell.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Eric Summerer,
and we're here to talk about board games. Hey, if you folks want to keep up with the Dice Tower news, we have a podcast called Dice Tower News. Well, it's now has been rebranded as Dice Tower Now. And you realize they've done more episodes than we have. This is episode 667. They're almost to 700.
Wow.
Anyway, we got new hosts, new sections. It's really well done, folks. It's really nice. And it comes out weekly, gives you all the board gaming news. So you can check that out at dicetowernow.com. Also, we have Dice Tower Digest. You want to get a newsletter that tells you what's going on? It's one way for us to send out announcements about everything. Hey, there's a Kickstarter going on. Hey, there's a convention coming up. Well, someday that will matter. Hey, whatever. So you can subscribe to that by going to dicetowerdigest.com. And if you did get the Dice Tower Digest last time, you'll notice I mentioned we have some new T-shirts available. We have the superhero dice guys from our Kickstarter. We have summer spectacular T-shirts and such, and some of the older ones like Tom is Wrong. Eric wears that every day. So you can check all that stuff out on our website, of course, dicetower.com. And speaking of dicetower.com, I'm in the early preliminary stages of getting that rebooted, folks. It's going to take a while, but we're working on it.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, I'm excited about it.
Cool.
So, but man, excited. Is it a lot? Well, it's a lot of work, right? You know, you want it to look good. And also, it's hesitant to talk to people about it because a website is not something you see being built.
Right.
It's just one day, boom, it's there.
Yeah.
But it takes months to years to get these things done. I hope it's not years, but it will be a while.
You know what I hear is really big in websites these days? Drop shadows.
Yeah.
So just put them all over the place.
I'm also planning to, when you go to the website, it's going to automatically play music.
Yes. Yeah,
that's
loudly,
a must.
Please.
And
some nice a MIDI version of the theme.
Animated GIFs. So all that's and it's going to be on GeoCities.
And a tiled background, please.
I don't even think GeoCities exists anymore.
I honestly have no idea.
Maybe it's still. Let me look here. Now I'm curious. GeoCities, Yahoo GeoCities was a web hosting service. It was founded in 1994.
Okay.
But it shut down in 2009, and then the Japanese version of it, which lasted longer, shut down March 31st, 2019. We missed it.
We just missed the Japanese GeoCities. Oh, well, we'll have to find a different platform, I guess.
My website is gone.
Just make sure you join the right web ring when you get things up and running.
Just to be clear, folks, I'm really going to try to make this look good. It's going to be hopefully compatible with phones and things like that. So I don't. Sometimes we joke, and then people are like, I can't believe they're going to do that.
Well, I joked about the drop shadows. Apparently, like, there was a whole kerfuffle on this knitting site where they added drop shadows everywhere, and the knitters freaked out. So don't do that.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's talk about games, and we'll start with Eric. We'll go back. The pun is. I'm losing the pun. Go.
Gonna go back in time.
No, it's not back in time because that's a different game.
Yes, that's very true. I'm talking about the other brand new Back to the Future game. This is Dice Through Time from Ravensburger. It is a cooperative dice rolling game, as the name would suggest. Your job is that Biff has stolen the DeLorean and has stolen a bunch of stuff. Artifacts from various points in the timelines of the Back to the Future series, and you have to return them. And the number of items that you have to return is based on the difficulty level of the game. You can play with as few as 2 per timeline or as many as 5 per timeline, depending on how crazy you want to get. These artifacts are in decks that are associated with the 4 main timelines of the series. You've got 1955, 1985, 2015, and 1885. And they're arranged in like a grid with 5 locations for each of those timelines. So it's a 5x4 grid of spaces. Each player is given a particular matchup of Marty and Doc from one of the timelines, and they are seated in the clock tower space in their home timeline. There's also Biff, Tannen, figurines that are placed on the board at the beginning. They sort of block spaces. And at the beginning of a round, events show up. Sometimes it is a special rule that does something crazy to that particular round, but usually it's going to be some sort of event, again, from the series of movies that you then need to get matching symbols in order to clear. Everybody has 4 dice, and they're going to roll those at the beginning of a round, and you can spend the symbols that you find to re-roll dice. If you get the flux capacitor symbol, you can change the timeline you're in. You sort of, basically, it's a row or column thing, so you can change your row. If you have the flux capacitor, you can change the column. If you get an arrow, you can simply spend a die to move to an adjacent space in the same timeline, and spend more of these symbols to achieve these goals. If you manage to clear a cell, a location, then you get one of these items from the deck for that timeline, and that has to go to another timeline. It's an item that has to be returned. It's actually a pick up and deliver game. You can hold up to 2 items on your particular DeLorean, and you have to take those somewhere. As long as you have a location that's free of any events and free of the Biff figurine. You can punch Biff, by the way. One of the symbols is a fist. You can punch him.
You apparently punch him to a different location.
You punch him clear across the board is what you do. And you can deliver these items. And when you deliver an item, that gets you one step closer to victory. It also gets you some other bonuses in the form of Einstein tokens. It's a good thing to do. Oh, it also moves the out-of-time marker. So this is your doom tracker. There's a 12-step marker at the top of the board. And when you return an item, it's going to move that doom tracker, the out-of-time marker, back 1 step. This is important because at the end of each round, you look at how many events are still out on the board, and the timeline that has the most locations covered by events is going to cause that out-of-time marker to move forward for 1 for each filled location, and 1 more for any of these paradox tokens that show up, which is also as a result of this end-of-round sort of thing. So if you ignore a particular timeline, it gets really bad, and you need to spend a lot more actions to make it safer. If you leave one timeline alone, it's going to knock you off the board very quickly. So you have to avoid that. The goal is to return all the items before the out-of-time marker reaches the end of the board. That's essentially it. The kids and I enjoyed this one. We understood it very well. The kids knew what they were doing. There was absolutely no trouble grasping this. This is a family weight co-op game, and I think it hits that sweet spot very well. It's obviously crafted with a love for the series. All of the events are iconic moments from the various films. I do wish that, so for each location and each timeline, there will be multiple copies of the same event. So like the McFly family rehydrates their pizzas. There's like one event that is the McFly family has pizza. But there's multiple copies in the deck of that event.
Thank you. That is exactly what I said.
I sort of wish that they had, still the same symbols on the card. They're differing symbols. Some of them are more difficult. Some bring Biff to that location, which means you got to punch him before you can take care of that card. But I wish that there had been multiple events in the McFly house, because more stuff happened in that scene than just making pizza. I know it must be illustration costs and all that sort of thing, but I just sort of wish that there was more variety in that deck, and not, because sometimes you draw the pizza card 2 or 3 times in one event run, in one round, and that's just odd. So that's my only real complaint. I think it works. I don't know if I felt totally immersed in the world. It does feel very mechanical, but that's not necessarily a problem. It does make it accessible and easy to introduce to family members. Again, my kids had no trouble with it, and my eldest said he liked it more than Horrified, which is interesting. I still prefer Horrified to this.
I wouldn't even really compare them. I'd compare the other Back to the Future. They're not. Is it the same publisher?
They're both Ravensburger.
You're right, but it's not the same design team.
No, it is not.
So
but I liked it.
I don't hate this game. I think it's fine. The biggest problem with this game is the other one exists. There's 2 Back to the Future cooperative dice games. And so this one, by very nature, is going to be compared. There's no way around it, because honestly, if you go to the store to buy one and you weren't listening really carefully to our podcast, you might buy the wrong one.
That's very true.
Because one's called Back to the Future Back in Time. There was Back to the Future Dice Through Time.
Yeah.
That's 2 words different. They use the exact same font. They both show DeLoreans. The one Eric's talking about shows 3 DeLoreans.
Yep.
The other one shows the DeLorean, the famous scene of the DeLorean and the ground on fire.
Okay.
So it's tricky, right? And because of that, I don't see a need to have both. I really don't, unless you're like a huge Back to the Future fan. And I like the other one better. My problems with this one, I mean, there's some good things about it. This one is super lucky. Like, super lucky. If I win or lose this game, I'm never convinced it's because of decisions I've made. The event cards showing up at the right time, the wrong time, there's almost no way to mitigate your dice rolling, which is really not, to me, it's not fun. If you roll dice, you got to have some way to mitigate it. And this game has a symbol that lets you roll other dice, but if you don't roll that symbol, then you don't get to re-roll.
Yes, you can spend 2 identical symbols as a wild.
You have 4 dice.
Right, you don't have that many.
So why would I spend 2 dice as a wild to re-roll the other 2 dice?
There is, I didn't mention a cascading mechanism. If you're on an early timeline, you can drop a die that then a teammate can use farther forward in time, which we used a couple times. It wasn't as useful as I would have thought, but it does possibly get you a 5th or 6th die to do something you need to do.
I will say that's the coolest part of the game. I think that's a neat mechanism, as you drop dice for other people to use. But this suffers slightly from there being a very fixed turn order. And so Eric will say, hey, I'll drop a die for you. I'm like, well, yeah, but...
you go before, or you go after me.
Yeah, you go after me, so yay. I don't know. I also, the artwork is really, really reduced is the best word. It's like clip art type art. There's no faces. It shows, like a kid wearing an orange vest, and okay, that's obviously Marty, right? But you don't see any facial expressions. I don't know. It just felt I think the theme is barely there for me. And I don't know. It's again, I don't think it's bad per se. It's just not great, and I'm looking for great games.
Okay. That was Back to the Future Dice Through Time from Ravensburger.
So let me talk about another game that's not great, but I still had fun playing it, is Solarquest. Now, Solarquest is an old game.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new version of it.
Really?
Yes. I did not realize this. I'm going to have to quickly look it up, but I think there was a Kickstarter for it. Because I saw it on Amazon. There was a Kickstarter for it. 245 backers pledged $12,127 in July 2018.
Okay.
It is almost the same game.
All right.
But with better graphics, and they changed things. So, for those who don't know, Solarquest, it was essentially Space Monopoly.
Yeah.
But crazy Space Monopoly. Because you would fly around on your spaceship, you roll 2 dice, you move, you see what you land on, but you could stay in orbit around a planet sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, you're forced to. Mm-hmm. It had some advanced rules that, you could buy fuel and you didn't want to run out of fuel, and people could build fuel stations on the board. The money got really crazy because, Monopoly, you get more money depending on how many properties you have and then the houses and hotels you build on them. In this game, you just got more money the number of properties you have, but there's 12 different properties around Jupiter. If you own 7 of those, people are paying you so much money they're essentially out of the game if they land on them. And so it has all that stuff still. The only difference they did is they now added mission cards. So you draw a mission at the beginning of the game. That mission says, if you own these planets, and it lists a whole bunch of planets, you win. And every time you pass go, which is the Earth, right, you can redraw that card if you so desire. You can also win the other way, which is to eliminate everybody else.
Okay.
It's not a great game. It just isn't. And I still had fun playing with my kids. It's just... You buy as many properties as you can. You hope the other people land on them. It's stupid. I like it better than Monopoly. It brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. My kids are like, this is kind of fun, but it's pretty lucky, Dad. Yeah. But when we were kids, this is all we had.
I remember playing that game and suckering my family into playing the advanced rules. Like we had played the basic rules for a while, and I'm like, finally, I really want to sit down and play the advanced rules with fuel and stuff. And I don't even remember how well it went, but I don't think it went terribly well.
Solarquest's advanced rules they're not for that kind of game. Right? Now, this one is slightly better. There's the little fuel stations are magnetic and they stick to the board.
Ooh.
Yeah. Again, it's a nicer production. And I want to say it wasn't that expensive. I have to say I don't do very many impulse buys. I sit and think about things for a while. Oh, it was $46. That's kind of, well, there's also a $42 one and they look different.
Oh, weird.
Huh. But they're obviously from the same company.
Huh.
Oh, then here's an old one for $105. Oh, there's a really old one from the one that you probably remember from the childhood, the long box with black.
Yep.
That's $329 on Amazon.
Whoa. That is not worth that.
Well, again, it's worth what people pay for it. These look the same, the boards for both of these other ones.
Huh.
I wonder why one is... Yeah, the components are the same. Well, one's 42 and one's 46. Look at the 46 one.
Sure.
One's called Mission to Mars Edition.
I don't know what that means.
Maybe it's just a new... this was opened... This was opened in the U.S. for the sole purpose of adhering the magnets to the game board, thus saving customers the task. Oh, I see. So they opened every copy and glued the magnets to the board. All right, that's dedication.
Wow. So you're paying $4 for the labor.
No, that's the cheaper version. Don't ask questions, Eric.
Wait, what?
Don't ask questions. It's a trap.
So it's an open copy, is what you're saying.
No, they taped it back shut. It says that in the description. That's Solarquest, folks.
I'm so confused.
You know what, though? I had fun with it, and I will probably bring it home and stick it on the shelf for my kids to play. Because it's a game I think they could play for a long time and just have fun. And also it teaches them math.
All right.
Solarquest.
From Solarquest to a solo quest. Next up for me is a game called Flash 8. This is from Scorpion Masqué. It is, the theme is like electrons that are moving around a grid, but it is like those slide puzzles that we've talked about in many other game comparisons, where you would be sliding the tiles around and trying to make a certain pattern. The production of this game is pretty cool. It has a player mat, very thick cardboard that has a recessed well in it that can hold 8 of these plastic circular tokens. And they're constructed such that they slide very, very well around. You get, I think, 3 blue ones and 2 yellows and 1 each of the other colors to make your assortment. Yeah, there's 3 colors that have only 1, and there's 2 yellows and 3 blues. You'll randomly place these on your board, and in the multiplayer game, you will flip up. You'll have a stack of, I think, 10 cards for each player, and the cards depict an assortment of 3 of these electrons. And your job is to, you say, ready, set, go, and everybody slides around simultaneously, slides their electrons around to try and match one of those cards. You say, stop! I don't think it's stop. It's something like zap, or it's some sort of thematic word. And then you check to make sure that you have correctly arranged these electrons, and then you score that particular card and take it. And you do this until all the cards have been taken, and whoever has the most wins. That makes sense. There's a handicap rule for younger players. They tell you to remove one of the blue electrons, so there are more free spaces on their board, giving them more freedom of movement, which I thought was a kind of a cool, rule for making it a little easier for the younger players. But my kids were not around to play this, and I decided to try the solo mode. And I thought, well, okay, they're just going to see how many you can do in a certain amount of time. And that is generally the idea, but there's an extra hurdle to the whole process. The backside of all of the cards have a single electron color on them and a symbol on them. And so you'll be using the backside of the cards, and you arrange them in a 3x3 grid. And the remainder sits there in the stack. And you're trying to get rid of the stack as best you can in 4 minutes. As soon as you say go, you will slide your puzzle around as best you can to make one set of 3 that appears in that 3x3 grid in front of you. You then move a special token to that row or column that you just made that says, I can't make that same row or column again. And then you take one of the symbols that is in that row or column you just completed, and you get to cover all of those symbols. So say you pick star, there's a star symbol, and you get to cover the 4 stars that are in your 3x3 grid with new cards. And then you keep going. So the symbols that you are able to cover more of will make you get through your deck more efficiently. And that is why I think it's an interesting twist, because not only are you doing the slide puzzle, you're also trying to make decisions as to what to go for based on what the most efficient moves are for covering more symbols. And that is like 2 separate things to work on at once, and I found it kind of an interesting challenge. So, while you may not be able to play Flash 8 with other people at the moment, the solo is an interesting challenge, and I enjoyed it. But I do look forward to trying it with the kids. Flash 8 from Scorpion Masqué.
Yeah, I have this one sitting on my desk. I will get to it, but I'm not playing it solo.
You gave it a go, and it worked.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it's possible. Maybe I will. I should be careful. I shouldn't say never. You never know. But since I have a cadre of kids who will play this, I don't think it will be a problem.
Sure.
Alrighty. So on the other end of the extremities of board gaming, we have Cloudspire. My word, is this heavier? So
but it uses discs. It uses discs, so it's similar.
Yeah, there's that. Cloudspire came out last year. I have finally played it. I highly enjoy it. But, okay, so this is a really fun game. It is a MOBA or tower defense type game where you are sitting there and you are building units each round and marching them towards your opponents, where they will shoot at them with their towers, and then you try to destroy their base and or towers, and they try to destroy your units. There is 100,267,000,000 special powers in Cloudspire. That's possibly an exaggeration, but I'm not kidding. There's a lot. Each of the different races included with the game has this huge board that explains stuff. And when I play this, I'm like, well, I'm just going to have you tell me what cool power you're destroying me with when it happens. Because I can't keep track of all that. The game takes place in some pretty straightforward phases. You get some money at the beginning of sorts that you spend to buy maybe some mercenary chips. By the way, the game Cloudspire uses really beautiful chips, poker chips, and other chips, less beautiful chips for health, but it's still a cool system.
Sure.
So you build some towers up, you build some units, then you have a certain number of command points, and this game has a deliberate escalating wave thing where they'll give you some stuff into wave 1, then wave 2 you have more, then wave 3 you have more, for no other reason than to just make each wave even more exciting.
Bigger. Yeah.
And then it's almost, automative is not the right word. You have a couple heroes, or I'm sorry, one hero maybe, or two heroes who are running around doing what they want. The other stuff just marches to the enemy and does damage to them. And so you have a few decisions in the game, but most of your decisions is picking how you put the units together, which one you go first. You're kind of setting everything up carefully. I like it. I don't know how often I'm going to play it because the overhead is that much. I'm not a huge mobile fan to begin with. I still think it's weird. The basic concept of I'm sending a bunch of guys at you and they just run at you straight. Now, don't get me wrong. For some reason, I really like tower defense games. I don't get it, but I'm not the guys attacking.
Right.
I'm the tower guy defending.
Right.
The mobile where my guys just run at you, it just seems like a really stupid plan. I'd be like, all right, stop. Why don't you guys run through that forest over there?
Yeah.
But I mean, I like this one. The Chip Theory Games just won the award from Dice Tower for best production for Cloudspire, and it's easy to see why. The board pieces are made of that mouse pad material, the neoprene. The chips are super heavy. It's easy to figure out what's going on, and they do tell you how every single special ability in the game works. And once you get the game going, it's not complex to play. It's just keeping track of all those special powers can be tricky.
Yeah, I got a chance to play this. I only played, I think, the first wave before I had to. This was at Dice Tower West, and I had to run off I had an appointment, so I could only play the first wave and enjoyed it. But this is certainly not my style of game. I can appreciate it, but it's just a lot to keep track of. Trying to understand how all of the different factions work and all of the moving pieces. This just didn't appeal to me. I far prefer Too Many Bones from Chip Theory Games. That more clicks with my aesthetic and the upgrading of your individual characters and stuff. This one, I can appreciate it, but it just wasn't really a strong one for me.
Yeah, and I get that, and I'd be very careful about recommending it to everybody, but it's still a really neat game. So that's Cloudspire. Okay.
So these days, in this enlightened world of ours, in the world of board gaming and IP, intellectual property-based games, there is a good chance these days that a game based on a property that you love will be a good game. It's not necessarily true that it's going to be a bad game. I went back in time a little bit to the era when a lot of the games that had a license were bad. This is a game from 1985 called Voltron, Defender of the Universe. It is billed as a memory game. It is a 5x5 grid in which tokens have been spread, and you must cooperatively find 5 lion keys to form the mythical Voltron. Along the side of this 5x5 grid board, you've got a battle track where there's a row beast sitting there. It's a big standee, a good 3 inches tall, sitting at the end of that. And you've got Voltron, which is 4 inches tall, off to the side. You don't get to play with him yet. He's off to the side. And you've got 5 of the 5 robot lions waiting to enter this battle track. And the track is like a racetrack, basically, or a tug-of-war track, maybe. Or even like the corruption track for Sauron in Lord of the Rings. It's a bunch of little spaces, and you will eventually meet. But if the lions meet the Robeast before you have found all 5 keys, you lose. You've got the Voltron Force, and this is the original style Voltron, the 1980s style Voltron. They're little standees as well, and they're on the outside of the board. And on your turn, and you could play from 1 to who knows how many players for this, because you don't actually act as any of the characters, you just make a move. So on your turn, you make a move with one of the characters from the outside of the board or wherever they're standing, reveal the token that they step on in one orthogonal direction, and then do what that token reveals. If you manage to get lucky and find a weapon, that's great. You get to take another turn. Plus, the lions move forward 1 space because they get more confident. Or, if you find one of the keys, great, you're 1 step closer to victory, you get to take another turn there, that's great too. But there's bad stuff. If you reveal a blast token, like an explosion, the Robeast is going to move forward, and he moves forward 2 spaces. That's bad.
Wait. All right, never mind, just keep going. This is sounding amazing so far.
And all of these things stay face up on the board when you find them. Oh, and when you find the lion key, it brings one of those lions onto the battle board. So until the lions show up, they're not marching forward. But once they're on the board, they're on the board. The last thing you might find is the Robeast token. And if you find that, well, then you have to do a battle. If you don't have any weapons already revealed, well, you've already lost the battle, and the Robeast moves forward 2 spaces. But if you have any weapons, well, then you draw from 5 tokens, 1 for each of the lions, reveal 1, and if that lion is on the board, great.
You realize that you get more excited when you talk about games when it's deliberately not good.
I don't know what you're talking about. You move forward 1 space. So, just to recap, if the Robeast won, it moves forward 2 spaces. But if you win, you move forward 1 space, but you already moved forward 1 space when you found the weapon. Keep in mind that as soon as the lions and the Robeast meet, you've lost. So, eventually, you will lose, and then the game's over. They tell you to try again. But if you manage to find all 5 keys, and you could just get super lucky and do that, then you have to, it says in the rules, you have to do the whole transformation sequence about, let's form Voltron, activate interlock. And then, only then, do you get to remove the robot lions from the board, bring out the Voltron standee, and literally knock over the Robeast standee with the Voltron standee. Game over. That is the only thing that standee is used for. This game is garbage, and it makes me sad.
I could have told you it was garbage when you picked the box up. Come on now.
It makes me sad. I've fallen into, I've forgotten how bad the games are from this era. This is totally a product. It is basically a play set and not a game. Its only worth is the standees that you get in the box, because then you have Voltron figures you can play with. So, yeah, if you are a fan of Voltron and you find this in a thrift store, just keep walking. Just keep going.
You know what it is? You are too seduced by themes you like.
I do like the themes I like.
I get it too, but as someone who was a Star Wars fan for a long time, you just learn sometimes when to walk by.
But there's lots of options for Star Wars games. There are 2 options for Voltron games.
I'm not disagreeing, but maybe Prospero Hall will pick one up.
Maybe. I can hope.
Folks, please do not read anything into that. That was literally me just making it up on the spot. Okay.
You'd think with the Netflix series we'd get a good Voltron game.
Yeah, but they've been doing other great things, okay? So maybe.
Okay. Just keep walking is all I'm saying.
So my favorite theme is Marvel Comics. How you doing, Eric?
Oh, boy. See, okay, not only am I upset about that transition, I'm also interested to know how you got your hands on this game.
This time, folks, it is by good habits.
Okay.
It is. No, I'm not kidding here. So I didn't get sent an early review copy or anything. So just to clarify, Marvel United was a game that was recently kickstarted this year by CMON to great fanfare.
Yeah.
Like, they ran that Kickstarter like a champ. They manipulated everybody from the get-go as they added more and more heroes to this cooperative chibi Marvel game.
They took a lot of my money, yes.
They did. Once they were done, they were doing this in conjunction with Spin Master. They said, hey, just so you know, it's going to be in stores. So you can get your stuff shipped in 2 waves where you pay extra shipping, but you'll get the base game early. And then you'll get everything else in March 2021. Or you can do 1-wave shipping where you pay less, but you just got to wait till then.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what? I will just do it in 1-wave shipping, and then I'll just go hunt this game down when it comes out in the stores.
Oh,
that was my thought. Well,
sure.
You know, I figured I could resell it or something, but I didn't feel like waiting that long. But I also didn't feel like paying for the extra shipping.
Gotcha.
So I know there's some logic flaws in there about just buying it instead of paying for the extra shipping. But anyhow.
I'll buy it twice instead of paying for the extra.
Well, yeah, but I figured I would just give the copy to somebody else then, right?
Right.
You know,
yes.
so.
Okay.
So early yesterday morning, as of us recording this, I got up early, as I am wont to do, and I got an email from someone who said, hey, Walmart is selling Marvel United. And I said, yeah, sure. But I went and looked anyway. And lo and behold, Walmart online was selling Marvel United. And I said, well, that's probably a mistake, but I will order one instantly just in case. So I did. And they said it will arrive tomorrow. And I said, yeah, okay, that's a mistake. So then I saw a few other people on the internet. When I went to work and told the guys, they all also instantly ordered it. And their shipping notices said next Tuesday, which is today, folks, when this show comes out. And I was like, well, I guess I got in early. That early to bed, early to rise makes a man wealthy, healthy, and get Marvel United is the new phrase.
Okay.
And then it showed up today as of us recording this.
And it was
then
real
when it
thing.
showed up, we instantly filmed an unboxing, and took some pictures, and said, you know what? We got some time. Let's play it live on the channel. And we played it through twice. So let me talk a little bit about what it is, because I actually went through the Kickstarter not knowing anything about it. Mm-hmm. I deliberately didn't. I just was like, I'll just wait till the game comes out. That gives me I'm less affected by hype that way. Now, I'm not affected by the fact that I do like Marvel, right? I like the universe of Marvel a lot. And I tend to like cooperative games, but this one's a very, very simple cooperative game. I have heard that the expansions and all the extra stuff is going to add more complexity to it. So I'll look forward to that in March of 2021.
Okay.
But this one, you pick one of 3 villains in the box: Ultron, Taskmaster, or Red Skull. And then each player picks a hero, and I believe there is 7 heroes in the box, maybe 8. I don't remember how many heroes. 7 sounds right.
Okay.
And you put out these locations. And you play the cards in order. The bad guy plays a card, he does some stuff. Then the heroes will play a card, but you get to use the icons on your card plus the icons of the card of the hero who played before you, which is kind of a cool mechanism. And you're running around the board, punching thugs, rescuing bystanders, stopping bad things from happening, and eventually getting to the point where you can fight the final bad guy. It's, as I said, very, very simple game, and yet I'm incredibly amused by it. I like it a lot. I want to bring it home and play it with my kids. I think they would enjoy it. And I like that you can make it harder. Like, we whooped it the first game. Second game, we beat it pretty, I wouldn't say easily, but it was easy. But there's a couple ways to ramp up the game that I read about, and I was like, oh yeah, well, we would have a much harder time if we did that.
Okay.
And I like that. I like that exists. The heroes are slightly different from each other. They have slightly different decks. They have really cool miniatures. This game has great models.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't argue that they're that different. The villains, though, are incredibly different. And I'm kind of excited that when this Kickstarter comes in, I'm going to have something along the line of 30 different villains.
Yeah.
You know, this is the first time a humongous Kickstarter is coming that I'm excited because I think I'll be able to play this game so many different ways. And since it's like a 30-minute game, it just makes me happy. There's so few 30-minute cooperative games that are easy to play.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like nowadays games are trending upwards in complexity. This one is not that way, but it seems like it could be complex once you get Thanos and the Sinister Six and all that stuff. But for now, just this base box, it's being sold at Walmart, and I'm glad people can go there and buy a game, and they're going to hopefully enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of fun with this. I'm looking at it as a strong family game contender. I really do. The whole discussion of whether it should be in the stores before Kickstarter backers get it, that's something different.
Yeah.
There's already some enraged people online. To those, I would say, I feel your pain. You can also go buy it at Walmart like I did if you so desire, or you can simply wait. You'll still have fun when you get it.
Yes. Oh, hey, Future Eric here. Quick note, I do have in my inbox right now a email from Kaman saying that the Walmart putting the game on sale was an error. So if you're hearing this now, it shouldn't actually be available yet. But it should be in stores, retail stores in August, is what the email said. Anyway, back to current Tom and Eric. I will wait patiently.
So that's Marvel United.
For now.
All right, let's keep going.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Due to the continued scourge of COVID-19 here in the United States, the remainder of the NBA basketball season is going to be played at the ESPN complex at Disney World, starting the end of July, with the teams playing in a virtual bubble, no fans allowed at the games. This and other sports openings give us hopefully a unique opportunity to look at the impact of fans on games. What is the home field advantage? Is it thousands of fans cheering that propels the home team to victory? Or is it the comfort of playing closer to home in familiar surroundings? We've actually got a little preview to get some insight into what might happen. In the middle of May, the Bundesliga, Germany's top football league, soccer to those of us here in the US, played their matches with no fans in attendance. And statisticians have been poring over that data, and the results are intriguing. First, not to bury the lead, but over the 6 weeks, the home field advantage appeared to be 100% the fans. Normally, home teams in the Bundesliga won 43% of their games. With no fans, that dropped to 33%, a 10% decline, which is huge in these types of sports statistics. In fact, there were signs that with no fans, there was actually a negative home team effect. Home teams won a bit less than visitors. Now, that may be statistical noise, or it may just be the weirdness of the situation, but that's what the data showed. Now, drilling down into the stats reveals a lot more details about why the home field advantage vanished. Now, first, goals scored by the home team dropped precipitously, from 1.7 to 1.4 goals per game. That's almost 30% fewer goals. Home teams took fewer and worse shots. It's hard to know exactly why this was, but perhaps it's because the home team isn't playing as hard. Players often report that they get energized by the crowd and that the roar of the fans helps them wring that last bit of effort out of their performance. However, the data does not support that, at least not directly. Players sprinted just as much and just as quickly with or without fans. In fact, most teams had more sprints without fans than they did with. The main difference is that for both home and away teams, there was much less flashy play, fewer crosses, fewer one-corner kicks, and less dribbling. In essence, there was less flashy play and more methodical play. Players were less likely to attempt a move that normally would get the crowd on their feet. Now, as the analysts write, the players exhibited the same amount of talent, but expressed it in different ways. By far the clearest difference in the game was not directly from the players at all, however. It was the refereeing. The referees behaved markedly different with no crowd. In empty stadiums, home teams consistently received more penalties than they did with a crowd. and they received more yellow cards. Unlike games with crowded stands, the refs handed out penalties just about equally. In addition, the overall rate of penalties for both home and visiting teams increased with no fans. The referees clearly were impacted by the crowd. Under normal circumstances, they are much more hesitant to call penalties for the home team, and when they did call them at reduced severity. Is this subconscious or conscious behavior by the refs? I would hazard a guess that it is mainly subconscious. I think that most referees, if you ask them, would think that they are being equitable in the moment and would have to be forced to accept that they are biased by lots of data, but I have no specific evidence of that. But this demonstrable bias of referees, with and without crowds, shines a different light on how other people who enforce rules, like the police, judges, and juries, can all be impacted by the crowd they are with at the time and subconscious biases, both internal and external. If you watch any of the NBA games when they restart at the end of this month, particularly if you've watched a lot of games under normal conditions, try to pay attention to the behavior of the players and the refs. Are they playing a different style of game? Are fouls called more or less frequently? It's going to be quite interesting to see how this experiment plays out. And once we can all go back to watching games again in the stadiums, you can go knowing that your full-throated support for your local team is having a big impact on the final result. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
We'd like to do a quick thank you to our sponsors, The Op, and I want to talk real briefly about one of their recent games here, Telestrations Upside Drawn. Yeah, I didn't say that incorrectly. Upside Drawn. This is designed by Kane Klenko, actually. A lot of people know him. And this is a little different than Telestrations, actually a lot different. In this game, players are drawing pictures, but they draw them using the paper, not the pen. What that means is you have a whiteboard and someone else will hold the pen down and I have the picture I'm drawing and I will move the board around underneath your pen. And the only thing I can say to you is up, down. So you have to move your pen up and then I, get it to the next position and put it down. And it's very entertaining that way. You can actually watch us playing it live on our channel. We'll have a playthrough of it so you can see my daughters playing it time and time again, and you can try to guess all the different pictures. But that is Telestrations Upside Drawn. I almost said upside down. Upside Drawn. It has enough for several teams to play the game. I definitely think you should check it out. I believe it says, up to 12 players. 30-minute game. Check it out from the Op. Telestrations Upside Drawn.
Questions. Daniel says, I know you guys aren't fans of can my 5-year-old play game X type questions. Neither am I. But how do you think game publishers determine the minimum age for a game that they put on the side of the box? Obviously, 3 and up for games with small pieces and 18 plus for mature themes makes sense. But what makes an 8-year-old more capable than a 7-year-old when it comes to a game? Now, I don't think. Yeah, a year. I don't think, like, if you're talking about an individual publisher, I think they deal with wider bands than that. You won't normally see from, say, Stronghold, you won't see a 7 and up and an 8 and up from that same publisher. You'll see, like, their very young games will have the 3 plus or the 5 plus, and then the midweight will have an 8 plus or maybe a 12 plus. It's much wider bands than just 1 year. But yeah, it is sort of weird.
I'm telling you, ignore all the ages. Well, don't ignore that. Don't ignore that 18 plus. Okay,
right.
that will come back to haunt you.
Well, I think it's marketing. A lot of it's marketing.
It is. Okay, so here's
aiming for.
Right. I won't say all publishers do this because some are try to be as nice as they can. But the fact of the matter is, I want to put as young of an age as possible on my box. Because the younger the age I put there, the more people who can play it. But the younger the age you put on your box, the more testing your game has to go through.
Yes. Also, if you put too young an age on the box, adult players may stay away from it.
Right. So there's some thought put into that, but at the end of the day, I can't tell you how many games I play with my kids that are 10, 11, and 12 that say 14 plus on them for whatever reason.
Sure.
Or I'll see a game that says 9 plus, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't know whose 9-year-old's playing that. Well, I do know because that guy on the internet always tells me. But yeah, honestly, again, I would try to go by, and every kid's different at every age, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
So I just go by what my kids can. Although I have used them in the past. But like, I'm sorry, you're 11 and that says 12 and up. I love to play with you, but do you want me to break the rules?
Maybe these things should have like sampling error incorporated in it. Like, so if it says 12 plus, you can probably add plus or minus 2 or 3 years to that.
Yes. I think.
Yes.
Just, again, watch the reviews. Maybe not from us, but I'm not trying to say watch Dice Tower reviews, but definitely keep an eye out there.
Yeah, it's a ballpark figure, and it's a wider range than it would appear on the box. It's not a hard and fast rule.
Okay. Robert.
Yeah.
Has sent in a very rambling paragraph, so I'm going to condense this down a bit here.
Sure.
So, he says Funko has access to virtually anything right. And so he's hooked to Funkoverse. And he ordered a bunch, but he's already craving more characters. First of all, I don't know. They're at this point, they've turned the fire hose on.
There's a lot.
There's DC, Harry Potter, Golden Girls, Rick and Morty, Back to the Future, Jaws. Jurassic Park, and that's stuff that's actually released. And right around the corner, we have more DC. We have Nightmare Before Christmas and Game of Thrones. All right, and there's Kool-Aid Man and some weird anime thing that goes around and gets enraged with a chainsaw.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff, but he's like, "What characters do you want?" I'm happy with anything for me because there's just so much out there. I'm having a hard time. I mean, Robert threw like a whole list of people here. But,
oh, yeah. He even told us whether he wants them in a base set or a 2-player pack or like a single promo. This is like a sell sheet, practically.
Now, I do say that I notice on here he mentioned Powerpuff Girls and Mojo Jojo. If that happened, Eric would go to the store and get it.
I would.
Instantly.
I would, yes.
And if it was Powerpuff Girls and Mojo Jojo versus Voltron, I don't know how he could contain himself.
Can you get the Funkoverse characters to assemble into a larger Funkoverse character? Because that would be awesome.
I don't think so.
It would be cool if you could.
I'm just happy with whatever they do. It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, he says, what sort of non-traditional advertisement should the game hobby look to spread to? Where he said that Wingspan made it into, Rado had mentioned that Wingspan made it to Better Home and Garden. And so, is there an opportunity to get major gaming personalities on a flyer that gets put in the game sold at Target? No. Can games get sent to big-name people like Fauna or Kimmel and get a shout-out? Maybe.
Yeah.
I think for companies, one of the things they should strive to do, and some companies do strive to do this, is you should try to get your games in museums.
Yes.
Especially if that museum has something to do with the theme of your game.
Yep.
Because I, like everyone else, get stuck in the gift shop at museums. Gift shops at museums are often pretty cool. They have some pretty cool stuff. And I would do that. Theme parks. I would try to get board games into traditional, different stores like that. For advertising, traditional advertising is so expensive. Like to get a radio shout out or a TV spot, that's really expensive. And you could send your games to Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel and stuff like that. But just realize, I'm assuming they get sent thousands of things per week.
They probably do. Yeah, and they're going to pick the games that are the widest range. No,
they're not. They're going to pick games that sound idiotic because that's funny.
Well, sure. Yes, but I mean, Fallon has played, like Taboo and stuff like that. They're going to play wide-ranging party games, silly games, and not necessarily a family weight or heavier weight strategy game.
Yes. And even if they did play one, they would mention it and go on.
Yep.
Different guests on these shows have mentioned these games. I know because anytime it happens, people then instantly tell me.
Yeah.
All right. But Robert's not done yet.
No. More questions.
He says, what do you think is the best way to know what game is more popular than another? He says, if I rank it a 7, you could rank the game a 6.5, and maybe those are too close or isn't much of a difference. Does units sold suggest what's most popular? Yes, because it was purchased. But once people play it, they could sell it because it wasn't for them. Plays can be misleading because I never record plays. While you may do every single one, I don't. So is there one encompassing stat that best shows which games are popular?
No.
Money.
Oh, money. Yes.
Money.
Sales. Sales
100%.
really is. Yeah.
It's sales. Even if people buy it and don't play it, it still doesn't mean the game's not popular. Games that are popular sell a lot. At the end of the day, you can get mad that Monopoly is the number one game in the world, but it's the number one game in the world. It sells the most.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe if you ignore like an initial debut of sales, but if anything that is still selling 6 months down the line has an amount of popularity to it, word of mouth or advertising or something has continued those sales moving. So that really is the best metric for popularity of a game, regardless of what happens after that purchase has been made. Clint says, does the Dice Tower have a Hall of Fame? This would be different than your top 100 list. This would be a list of the most influential games ever made. You could have criteria in place that games must meet in order to be added, like it needs to be at least 10 to 20 years old, must have made some major impact, not just a favorite. Then each year you could do an Hall of Fame show where you announce that year's Hall of Fame class, just like the NFL, Major League Baseball, and look at possible additions in the upcoming years. This sounds like something that we've done in the past.
Yes, but it never actually came to fruition.
Didn't we actually induct a couple of... We did it maybe
We may
2
have.
years.
I want to say this happened back when the Dice Tower was not the Dice Tower Awards, but they were the Podcast Awards.
Yeah.
And I like the Hall of Fame show idea, and I like everything about this. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a necessary thing. And I keep putting it off because I say I can't do it at the same time as the awards. It needs to be done separately. And this year, with there being no conventions, this may actually be a year that this happens. The problem I ran into is, okay, there's no way that this is going to sound not condescending. But most people aren't good enough to vote on this. In the sense of, you need to have an all-encompassing understanding of the history of gaming. And I found that when we first brought this up, there were several games that are clearly Hall of Fame games. And you say, well, Tom, that's your opinion. Whatever. Clearly, and people are like, well, I never heard of that, so I'm not voting for it. So the only way I can think of an initial one is for me to find 5 or 6 people, or find a team of people who can also set aside their biases. Like Monopoly should be in the Gaming Hall of Fame. I don't care if you like it or not. It should be there.
I feel like we actually went through this process and did a first swath. And the first swath was relatively easy to pick.
Yes, but when we went through that second one, there were, again, games that should be there because of whatever reason. Like they were maybe they were the spawning of something. Someone's like, yeah, well, I never heard of that, so I'm not voting for it. And I was like, And in a small group of voters, that sort of thing can really affect it. And I was just a little disgruntled about that. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna get a committee together, but it's gonna be a pruned committee. Because one of the things that we have in gaming, and again, folks, I don't mean this to be negative at all, is that there are people constantly coming in a hobby. And so you could even have someone who's really popular with podcasting and videos and a great reviewer, and they've only been in a hobby for 5 years. That doesn't make them any less of a reviewer or podcaster at all. But for Hall of Fame, it matters.
You need to have a certain sense of
I'm not saying you even have to be in a hobby that long. You could still be in a hobby for 5 years and vote in Hall of Fame, but then you would need to do research and stuff. I've only been gaming for 20 years, seriously gaming. I mean, I've been gaming my whole life, but seriously gaming for 20 years. But I read all the time about these older games and look at these older games and try to figure out. I talk to people who were around. It's just fascinating to me. So I know a little bit about this. I know which games were a big deal. And I know other people also know this, and so I need to get that together. So that's why I haven't done it yet. Maybe what I might do is I might make a separate committee for the Hall of Fame, because I really think when it comes to the Hall of Fame, it shouldn't even be really much of a debate. We shouldn't. Maybe as we start adding them each year, like I know initially I think we said there had to be a 10-year.
It was at least 10 years. And there was discussion of whether Carcassonne was just about to become eligible at the time that we were doing this. So it's been 10 years since we've done this. And there was discussion whether we should immediately throw it in there or whether it needs to age a little bit more.
Actually, Puerto Rico, so that's 2002, so we must have talked about this in 2011 or 2012 when we first were doing this.
Yep.
Oh, Carcassonne is 19? Are you sure it wasn't Puerto Rico?
Maybe
no,
it was
Carcassonne
Puerto
was
Rico.
2000.
Yeah.
Either way, right. And so I could see there being discussion on that. But so another thing that I'm interested in is baseball. And baseball has their own Hall of Fame. There are people who are really good who aren't in the Hall of Fame because of different things. I just was watching a movie on the Black Sox scandal, and so she was Joe Jackson isn't in the Hall of Fame because of that. Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame because of things he did. But there's other people who aren't in the Hall of Fame because the writers don't vote them in for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I don't want there to be politicking involved. I don't think there will be. But that initial slate of games to make it in the Hall of Fame, it needs to be complete. It needs to not – we shouldn't be going back and consistently adding games from years ago. We shouldn't be doing what the toy – what's that toy award that's given out every year that makes me mad every single time? You know which one I'm talking about. Where they inducted the Toy Hall of Fame or whatever it is. They've inducted the stick. And every year they pick 3 popular toys and things from like the last 40 years, and then one of them makes it, or no, they have like a list of 10, right? And then 3 of them make it. Yay. And then the next year, there are 10 different games. I'm like, wait, or 10 different toys. I'm like, well, what happened to the ones year before that almost made it? It's so, it irritates me. I mean, a Hall of Fame is going to have people who, it gets people's discussion going, and I'm all for that. But at the end of the day, there's like at least 30 games, which there should be no discussion. I shouldn't have to argue with you whether Catan makes it in the Hall of Fame. It's an obvious pick. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my concern, I think, that sort of thing. And you say, well, Tom, what might be obvious to you is not obvious to other people. No.
Well, but I mean, that is why
I know.
A committee.
Sure, but again, it's not like best of the year. I mean, best of the year is definitely opinions. Hall of Fame, there's facts to back up those opinions.
Yes, I mean, I'm again. It's been 10 years. I remember there were some legitimate discussions over some of these games, and not just I've never heard of that. It's like, well, I think there were other games that came before that were more influential, and maybe we should be looking at those. It was discussion and not just.
I'm not saying it was bad discussion or that the people involved were bad. In fact, one of the people involved in that discussion who I thought was doing a really good job, name was Geoff Engelstein.
He usually knows what he's talking about.
I agree. And now I'm looking to see, because I keep all my emails.
Hopefully when I said anything, it was logical.
2011 is when we talked about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Man.
Well, I'm just saying, if you are going to resurrect this idea, go back and look through those discussions so that we, can start from square 3 instead of 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's almost 10 years more worth of games that we can look at.
Sure. Yeah, Ticket to Ride is eligible now. It was not when we had
you know what? We may not have all this. It's in a Dice Tower. Yeah, it's in a Yahoo group.
It's in a what? It's on GeoCities?
No.
Why did you put it on GeoCities, Tom?
Stop.
It's on a CD-ROM that got filed somewhere.
Wow. It's gone. The voting is gone.
Oh, no.
All right.
Well,
that answers that.
I hope that answers that question, Clint. Thank you for that one.
All right. All right. The next question here.
Oh, we're old, Tom.
No, Clint, we're going to do it. Okay. I think it's a great idea. All right. Let's see here. The next question is from Matthew. He says, who, what, and perhaps even why is Prospero Hall?
Why?
It's a design name, he says, behind some of the best IP gaming experiences we have access to. You know, and so he talks about different games that they've done. He tried to Google search them, and it almost raised more questions than answers. So good news, Matthew. I was on the phone today with one of the people in charge of Prospero Hall. And I said, hey, I'm going to answer this question. What secrets can you tell me? And they said, you could go to prosperohall.com. And I said, oh. So I went to prosperohall.com, and you can click a link that says team, and it shows you everybody involved. Pictures of each of these people and what they do. So it's a team of people, and they work in coordination one with another, and some of them are in charge of operations and licensing. But there's a whole section here of people involved in game development. And those are the people who are often in charge of putting games together. Not all of them. There's also product development. But then there's a team of visual and 3D design. And we had several of these people show up on our award show and talk. I can recognize them now because I've seen them here. And so they were a design group that was designing for different companies like Ravensburger, but now they are owned by Funko. Funko got them, and they've made many games. Back to the Future, Back in Time, Bob Ross, Art of Chill, Choose Your Own Adventure, House of Danger, Funkoverse, Godzilla, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Battle, How to Rob a Bank, Horrified, Jaws, Jurassic Park Danger, Adventure Strategy Game, Kiro, Pan Am, Suspicion, The Shining, Donner Dinner Party, Footloose Party Game, Pop-Tarts Card Game, which is coming out soon, and I'm so excited about it. Should you toast your Pop-Tarts, Eric?
I would say yes.
I'm agnostic. You can do it either way. Okay. Skulk, Yacht Rock, Home Alone Game, Last Defense, Marvel Battle World, Monster Crunch, The Breakfast Battle Game, and Something Wild. That's a lot of cool games.
That is a lot of games.
So, anyway, again, there's a whole, their website's really well done. It shows all the different people. It shows all the games that they've done. So that's your answer there.
Either
it's not
that,
a shadowy cabal.
Or it's a very elaborate set of aliases.
They've worked hard, but they've managed to surprise everybody.
It's all one big alternate reality game, and this is the rabbit hole.
But I hope that does help. It did help me.
Ben says, I've been playing board games for a decade and really look forward to gaming with my kids. I play King Domino with my 7-year-old and make her do the math. But I'm not looking for suggestions. My 6-year-old son loves dinosaurs and robots. He discovered my box of Smash Up when he was barely 4, and I allowed him to look through the cards. Eventually, he took the cards he liked. Then the whole set. Cards were damaged, lost, colored on, etc. I decided to simply sacrifice the game for my son's enjoyment. What games did you choose to sacrifice for your kids? What was the hardest game to let go? Oh boy. So, I mean, lots of the games that were intended for kids have been absorbed into my children's rooms and have not always, survived that transition. My son had a humidifier in his room that was too close to the game shelf, and Catan Jr. melted. So there's that. Also,
sure. If you give your kids, I mean, I think we can exclude that.
Right.
If you give your kids any kids game to keep, like I have shelves behind me right now as we talk, full of kids games, and I just don't open them and look at them because I would probably get mad.
Probably. I think probably the oldest game that got co-opted by my youngest is the Dinosaur Tea Party card game. Which he really enjoyed. This is my now 9-year-old, and he brought it to school, wanting to show it to his friends. They were going to have an indoor recess or a game day or something. He was very excited to introduce it to his children or his friends, and I I had, organized this. All of the decks had Hugo's magic tape around them and all organized and meticulously set up, and he took it to school, and another child sat on it. And I haven't really tried to play it since. But I don't know if I want to. So that's maybe the one that's hurt the most.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I've sacrificed a game for my kids other than, like I said, these kids' games, because I'm pretty adamant about that. Like, that's my game. Oh, you want to play with some stuff? Well, here's a different thing you can play with.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not making light of the question. I completely understand what you did here. That's fine. If they like looking at the stuff, and I've let this happen. In fact, the Marvel Battle Worlds game I just mentioned from Funkoverse, I'm going to let my son just play with all those little mini, little cute little marble figures.
Yep.
But also, it's not a sacrifice because I don't like the game at all. but I mean, yeah, there's that. Hey, you live with your kids forever. Well, hopefully, you have them around. It's just a toy.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When my kids break, smash stuff, which they do so very much, I do not know how kids manage to reprogram electronic devices, break more chargers than should ever happen in the history of humanity. Kids are so smart. They can break your passwords and get on computers and do things, but they also download every virus known to man. So that could be annoying, but at the end of the day, they're my kids.
Yep.
So I think I do yell about technology breakages in my house more than everything else combined.
Yeah.
That and eat your food.
Yes.
Alrighty. Last question's from Dave. Dave says, during a recent YouTube video, we did a Spiel des Jahres showdown where me, Mike, and Z, we voted for different things. And he said all three contributors voted for Hanabi. It made it pretty high. I didn't vote for Hanabi. I voted for Hanabi against a lesser game. I wanted it to lose. But anyway, he said he disliked the game. And so he was thinking about why he disliked Hanabi. And he said that he went to a game day on a meetup, and he found it, and a group of people wanted to play Hanabi. He was like, great. So he played it with everybody. And after the rules were taught, he was then given the extra how our group plays rules. It involved how to answer and ask the questions, what the location of the card in your hand meant, what to do with cards based on the questions, etc. During the game, says Dave, I made several mistakes, not from the game rules, but from their rules. I was chastised by 3 different people over the course of the game. My wife and I had a similar situation with Terraforming Mars where we were the 2 new players. After my first turn, the teacher of the game, seated to my left, played a card that undid my entire first turn. And later in that game, another experienced player played an asteroid card against my wife and eliminated all the plants on her planet, destroying her entire engine. Although I would argue that you can come back from that particular one. But anyway. Yeah. So he says for the last 3 years, he's disdainfully looked at Hanabi and Terraforming Mars at game nights and board game events. And he says, are there any games that you dislike due to no fault of the game itself, but from the way you were supposed to play it, or due to the people experience you had the first time you played it? I've heard that Puerto Rico can be difficult on new players, and that this kind of thing can happen with that game as well. First of all, Dave, I appreciate the fact that you are wise enough to realize why you dislike these games. Maybe you would dislike them anyway, right?
Yep.
But yes, and as a reviewer, I have to think of this all the time too.
Yeah.
I just lost that game by 100 million points. Is that going to affect my thinking of it? Or I played that game with a really annoying person. Will that affect my opinion of the game? And I try really hard not to allow it to. Mm-hmm. But has it happened? I thought about this one for a while. I'm struggling to come up with an example. Maybe diplomacy.
Okay. But
I don't know that I would like diplomacy anyway.
Yeah.
But I know I don't like it, but I will say my first couple games, I was just like, can I smack some of these people? I didn't.
Yeah. Puerto Rico was already mentioned by Dave. That's one that I have certainly fallen into that trough. And the Hanabi example is an interesting one. A lot of trick-taking games can fall into that. I think the Crew could fall into that if you are dealing with a group that knows each other very well, and you are suddenly not just playing the game, but having to play the people as well. And depending on how welcoming and tolerant the existing group is of that new element in their midst, it can be off-putting, for sure. And as far as first experience just going poorly, have you heard of a game called Citadels, Tom?
What game?
Citadels! My first play of that didn't go very well.
What?
And it's really
I never knew.
I know. I feel bad bringing it up. But yeah, that's certainly
somewhere there's a guy who taught you the game, and he's like, I've ruined Eric Summers' life.
He doesn't listen to this show.
How do you know?
Because he's the leader of my game group. I still go back there. They're nice people.
We talked about you today about that regard. We were talking about ways to persuade Eric to move to Florida.
Ah, interesting.
And I was explaining why that would never happen. And then I said, but the good news about it would be then Eric could stop in that inane game picking system.
I haven't been to that game. I would adore that game picking system right now.
That's true.
I will do anything.
All those annoying things that you disliked about your gaming group, you're like, I miss them.
I went from having a pick every 2 weeks to having 0 picks. So,
well, with your kids, you kind of
I get a pick every 3 weeks on family game night now.
You just got to be more assertive here.
Yes.
Or play more than one game.
Yeah, that's bedtime. They have to go to bed.
It's summer.
Yeah.
I know. I gotcha. I completely understand. Alrighty. Well, that is our questions.
Yep.
Folks, we got I'm going to be doing a question palooza in several weeks. So if you would like to ask questions, and I believe we'll have Mandy on in that show too. So think about that when you send them in.
Yeah.
Yep. So keep that in mind. All right, let's keep moving.
All right.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USA Opoly, at theop.games.
All right, Fauna. Which means animals, I guess. But
yeah.
I don't know. Because we're doing, in the future, we'll be doing a Flora one. Why didn't I do Flora first? No, it's Fauna and Flora, right? Fauna always comes first.
It's Flora and Fauna is the usual, but you know, we're mixing it up. That's what we're doing.
Sure. And this is, I know that some people, when I do these lists, people are like, meh, 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 meh. I don't want to. But you know, these kind of top 10 lists, first of all, we talk about maybe some games you haven't heard of before, but there are people who are looking for topical lists.
Sure.
You might like animals, and so I would hope that you would enjoy these games.
This, I took on a few more restrictions in my list than I think you did, Tom, and a lot.
This is normally what I do.
Yeah. As I was researching this, I found a lot of games with anthropomorphic animals. You know, not necessarily animals being animals, but animals going on sword and sorcery adventures, or
like Beastie Bar,
or going bar hopping, or running a village. You know, doing human-like things, but they're animals, which is great. I wholeheartedly enjoy these games, but for this, I kind of wanted to pick games that at least try to take on the animal nature of their subjects, and so. I excluded a few favorites, unfortunately, and that's why they're not on my list.
Well, I don't disagree with you, although you said you didn't put any racing games in your list, and I might argue that you have one on your list.
Let's see. Maybe I do. Oh, I kind of do. You're right. Well, okay. I didn't just
Secondly,
say that.
I might argue that one of your entries is also not technically animals.
Interesting. We can discuss that.
But I'm also hesitant because I'm not sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to that because if it's what I think it is, I'm ready.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I'm going to look it up just in case. All right. I've kind of followed these rules to some degree. I figured if the animal wasn't very strong, I wouldn't put it on the list. if there wasn't a lot of animals in the game.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of good games that are not on my list, but happily, most of the good games that missed my list made Eric's list.
Okay. All right.
Including his number 10.
Number 10.
Number 10 is Reef, the game about creating a coral structure and forming patterns and, getting an engine going as you acquire cards that give you those coral pieces, but also using those cards to score the coral structures you've created. I really, really love this game. For the purposes of this list, it's not quite as far along just because it doesn't give a tremendous sense of the growth of coral. It's more mechanical and abstract, but still, it is about the animal that is coral, and it's a really great game. So number 10 for me is Reef.
There's parrotfish in it. Come on now.
Parrotfish in Reef? Oh, wait, with the expansion.
No, they're in the base game. You have to actually eat the reef. Oh, I'm sorry, the shrimp. No, the parrotfish eat the reef, right?
Not in this game.
Oh, you're talking about Reef, not Reef Encounter.
I am talking about Reef.
I don't, my mind just went blank there. Yes, I didn't put this one in the list. Sorry. My number 10 would not have made my list. It may be a different number. This didn't make my list because I don't get any animal function out of this at all, but okay. Beast of Balance is my number 10. This game is really cool. If you have not played this game, it comes with a device, a balance device that hooks up to your electronic device, your phone or an iPad or something like that. And then it comes with a bunch of animals that are weirdly shaped, and you are trying to balance them. But as you put them on, you are making them breed with each other and make these really weird new animals. Or you can migrate them by putting different things on. It's actually pretty neat. Yes, it gets into fantasy world as these beasts start, breeding with each other. You have a parrot bear, but I really like it, and it's a pretty strong animal thing, and it shows how the different animals. What if a lion lived in the sky? I don't know. I really like it, and it has really cool shaped animals.
Okay,
that's Beasts of Balance.
Number 9.
My number 9 is an older area control game about tribes of animals sort of scrounging for territory and evolving to take on new territory and eventually clashing with each other. It's called Wildlife. This is one that hit the table a lot in my game group. There was sort of a group that brought it out every single week. They got very good, and they became real sharks at it, even though the sharks don't appear in the game. Wildlife, my number 9.
Wildlife is an excellent game, and I would love to see this one redone, I think. Yeah. Like a 2.0 version of it. And maybe that will happen. My number 9 is my number 9 favorite Fauna game is Fauna.
I would have put this on my list, but I haven't played it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But have you played any of the spin-offs of it?
I know how the system works. I've just never actually played through it.
So Fauna is a game that's actually about animals.
Yep.
From Friedemann Friese, one of Eric's favorite designers.
Indeed.
And it shows a map of the world and a bunch of animal statistics on it. And you'll draw a card about an animal. So you draw about the raccoon, right? And then you're going to pick a category. So you might pick the length of the tail or the weight or just where it's found in the world. And then everyone's going to place cubes on the board on different things. You might say, I think it weighs, 5 kilograms or whatever. And Eric might say, I think it lives in Arabia, which would be wrong.
It lives in my backyard.
Yeah, right. So, but a lot of these animals, you have no idea, but you might get close. And this game gives you points for getting it right and for being close to the right answer. And so it's actually pretty educational, but it's a fun way to play a trivia game. Because if you're like, well, that person quickly put his cube there. He knows it's in that area on the board. I'll put my cube next to that area and get another point.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might say, well, this animal lives in Africa. But Africa is a whole continent.
Yeah.
Where in Africa does it live? I don't know. I really like this game. I like the spin-offs better, I think. They did one, I think, Americana, or maybe just called America. And they did one about history in the world. I forget what that one was called. But I like the Terra. Sorry.
Yep.
Terra. And then there's also Fauna Junior, which that one I haven't seen. And then America. They're all based on the same system.
Number 8.
Number 8 is a kid's game that I've mentioned, I think, just a few weeks ago. It's a pick-up-and-deliver game called Echidna Shuffle from Watzelpogue Games with adorable little echidnas that sort of shuffle their way around. They can't jump over each other. You have to move the one in front of you if you're going to move one around. You have to pick up bugs and deliver them across the board. It's adorable. It's simple, but a great pick-up-and-deliver and sort of a little bit of a take-that game to play with your kids. Echidna Shuffle, number 8.
My number 8 is higher on Eric's list. He got it there quicker than me.
Number 7.
But not that much quicker, because my number 7 was Tom's number 8. That's Fast Sloths. This is
definitely not a racing game.
You're right. Okay. I mean, but not quite, it is a race to complete a goal, but it is not a racing game in the sense, it's not Snowtails, which may have made my list. And we had just talked about racing games.
Or Camel Up.
Right.
Or any horse racing game, because they all have animals.
Right. So this is not quite a straight up racing game, but the object of the game is to pick up your leaves from all over the board. I think you need to get all but one of them. But you are a sloth, and you can't move very quickly. You have to utilize the other animals on the board in order to get you around the board. And what I like is that each of these animals, and there's several in the box, you only play with, I think, 6 at a time, and they all play slightly differently. And while it is not the most realistic, each of these animals sort of draws on the properties of that animal. The eagle can fly around, the elephant can throw the sloth with its trunk, and the ants work in, conga lines. It's cool to work with the different animal tokens and the different abilities of those animals and get your sloth around the board as efficiently as possible, which is why it's my number 7. Fast Sloths.
And my number 8. Fast Sloths is really well done for everything Eric says, and I really like it. And I know they made another map for it. Did they add other animals too?
No, it's just a map. I don't have the map, but I was very excited about it, and I was told that it's just a map. I'd love.
Yeah, I'm not that excited about another map. Other animals would be fun, but yeah, it's really well done, and I enjoy it. And I did not think I would, so I'm very pleased to have like that one. Mm-hmm. My number 7 is a fairly complex game, it's actually kind of a step up from Eric's number 9, Wildlife, and that's Dominant Species. Mm-hmm. Dominant Species, it's one of the 2 heaviest games on our lists.
Yep.
It's a big worker placement game. It's long, but you are taking a species of animals from spiders or dinosaurs or whatever and trying to become, the dominant species by placing, growing, breeding, moving, attacking. It's very take-thatty. It's very long. It's very involved, and some people love it. It's a really well-designed game, but go read a review before you buy it because there's a lot going on in it. But Dominant Species, my number 7.
Yeah, I have not gone back to this game after the first time I played it. This goes back to Dave's question in the question segment. This first play did not go well. I got hit by a meteor very early on that nearly wiped me off the board in the first round of the game, and it took a long time for me to sort of build up my forces again, and the whole thing lasted like 6 hours. This was not a good fit for my group. And it just hasn't hit the table again. So that's why it's not on my list.
Number 6.
Number 6 is Evolution, a game about animals gaining traits to make them more effective at either gathering food or protecting themselves from predators or being the predator themselves. It's an interesting balancing act as you figure out what you want your creatures to do and how to more efficiently do it. It's a tricky puzzle. I have not played any of the variations of Evolution. I've only played the original game, but it is a cool game. Number 6, Evolution.
I considered it, but if I was going to put it on the list, it would probably be Oceans would beat it out. My number 6 is my single dinosaur game on the list, although I did consider one other one, which might make the list, and that's Dinosaur Island. Yes, it's about dinosaurs and capturing them in kind of an something that hasn't happened. It's basically Jurassic Park, the board game. But there's a lot of dinosaurs, a lot of dinosaur meeples in this game. It's a cool worker placement game. This is the heaviest game on this list by sheer weight. As in, if you pick this game up, you're like, whoa, what is in this box? Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. Dinosaur Island.
I have this and still haven't gotten it to the table, and it bothers me. I know I would probably enjoy it too, and I need to play it.
Number 5.
My number 5 might be the dinosaur game that Tom was talking about, Raptor.
It is.
It is a 2-player game in which one player is the raptor mother trying to protect her babies, and the other player is the scientists trying to tranquilize the raptor to be able to study them safely. You're not hunting them, you're trying to tranquilize them. And it's not asynchronous, asymmetric. The way that the two sides play out. One is trying to sneak up and the other is trying to attack. And it's very cool how those two sides clash. It feels like a cool tug of war. Raptor, my number 5.
Good pick. My number 5 is one of my 2 anthropomorphic games, and that's Root. But I got to put it on here because I feel like we get yelled at a lot if we didn't. It's a really good game. And you play one of different factions, the cats, the birds, the woodland creatures. And then when they add the expansions, there's even more factions involved, and they're all animals. So if you like Redwall or Watership Down,
yep.
That's the theming of this, but it's actually a fairly light war game. Although light might be a thing, and a very asymmetrical one. We've talked about this a lot in the past. It's a great game. Root.
It is a great game, and we already described why it's not on my list. Mice and Mystics is also not on this particular list, even though I...
Oh, that's right. You're right. I would have picked that for your number 1, actually.
It's just not... It's not the same thing. I mean, I guess Mice and Mystics does feel more like the animals because you are actually having to act in ways that are very animalistic. So it fits better. Root feels like a war game that just happens to be adorable animal factions.
Okay, I'll buy that. That's true. I'm sticking with it, but I accept your point.
Okay.
Number 4.
My number 4 is Primordial Soup, about very, very small animals, little amoeboid creatures, and these are gaining traits to make them more efficient at picking up food and excreting on the board, which then other players can use to do stuff. And what you pick to be your particular traits is all part of what makes you an efficient amoeba creature in Primordial Soup. Number 4.
Yeah, this is the one I was not sure on. Well, I don't think technically an amoeba is an animal.
I think it has a genus and species, doesn't it? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're right.
It says it should be noticed. This one thing I did are amoebas animals. I did a search for that.
Okay.
And this one paper says it should be noted that amoeba are not animals. However, they are classified in the protist kingdom. I'm being very picky here. I don't know,
okay.
But I actually considered this too. Well, here's actually the answer for it. Oh, I have to become a study.com member to read this answer? Then forget that. I'll never know. Thank you.
They're not flora, is what I was going to say.
Isn't an amoeba a plant or animal cell? Neither. I will accept it, Eric.
Welcome to our science podcast.
Well, yeah, we're going to get answers on
we
this.
We probably are, and I welcome it. Maybe it's a third category that I'm not.
It's a great game, though. Yeah. I wanted to put on my list, and I was like, I don't think I can. I'm not sure. All right. It's in the Dice Tower library. So in the year 2027, when we have conventions again, you should check it out and play it.
Yes.
Here's my other anthropomorphic game, and that's Bunny Kingdoms. But I would argue that they're bunnies, and they populate pretty quickly, so it kind of makes sense.
Sure.
I just like it.
If I can throw in Mice and Mystics as my 0, that'll be... You can put Bunny Kingdoms on.
Bunny Kingdoms is a great drafting game from Richard Garfield. You draft placing bunnies all over the boards, trying to score points in many different ways. It is a ton of fun. my number 4.
Number 3.
My number 3 is going to show up on Tom's list. So I'll be here in this tree with my binoculars, just staring over there.
It's super creepy, Eric. My number 3 is Barren Park. Not Bear Park. I'm still just not sure why it's... Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's about bears. It's a tile-laying game where you're building a park for bears. This is not anthropomorphic. They're actually bears.
Sure.
And people are coming into your park to see various bears, and it's great, and you should play it. That's my number 3, Barren Park.
This is another one I haven't played.
Number 2.
Number 2, Tom thought was my number 10, and that is...
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's Reef Encounter. This is the Richard Breese game where you grow coral fields and protect them with your shrimp and have your parrotfish eat them at opportune moments. And there's a whole hierarchy of which coral can eat other coral and what they will score. And it is a pretty heavy game, actually, in the way this mechanism works. You have to eat coral to then get coral and trigger actions and all sorts of mechanisms. It's heavy, but it's a delicious sort of heavy. Number 2, Reef Encounter.
It's really fascinating. This is another one that I would like to see a second edition of, I think.
Or third, right? I mean, yeah, you want to see a revised
If you're counting the Z-Man as second,
Right.
It's just different artwork. It's the same game. It's really well done. If you like the game Tigris and Euphrates, you would like it. It's actually a fairly mean game.
Very. Not fairly, very.
Yeah. So yeah, great, good. This one was close to being on my list. My number 2 is Isle of Cats. This is a game in which you are rescuing cats from islands. It is very similar to Barren Park. It is another polyomino game in which you place these different Tetris shapes on your board as you rescue various cats. So if you like bears or you like cats, I like both these games very close to the same. So right now I'm giving Isle of Cats the edge, but I do like bears better than cats. So I don't know. They're both good games.
I enjoy Isle of Cats very much. I just didn't feel like it felt like cats. I mean, they don't move.
Are you kidding? They lay all over the deck. They're weirdly shaped. Sometimes they can be extremely annoying. They want an inordinate amount of food. Sure felt cat-like to me.
Okay, when you add the food in, maybe.
Every morning I get to work, and I look out the back door, and there's this cat just staring at me.
Well, it heard about what you've been saying.
And it's basically saying, where's the food? And because I once had mercy in my heart to feed the cat,
Oh, really?
I'm only doing it now because that's what...
So wait, you have a pet cat, is what you're telling me?
It's your number 1.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1 is Mermies.
I can't believe this is your number 1. This is really high up.
I really like this. I like the whole system about the raising your hive and your anthill to be more efficient and laying out your pheromone trails, and it just works for me. I like it. It's solid, and it's about ants. Little adorable ants. Mermies, number 1.
Yeah, my number 1 is not a big surprise right now, and this may drop down, but it's probably never going to drop out of the top 10, and it was Eric's number 3, and that's Wingspan. Mm-hmm. The thing about Wingspan is it gives you all these stats about birds, and it's also a really good game.
Yeah.
It meets all the criteria.
Yes.
And in fact, I saw someone post the other day, they said, would you play a dinosaur version of Wingspan? I was like, yes, I would. I would play this game with any animal theme. It would be fun. I mean, I'm glad they did it with birds. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it's just really cool. You flip over a bird, you put it, you see if you can get the right foods for it. You put it in different categories. You get eggs. Different birds have special abilities. I really like it. And I'm excited about the new expansion, even if it's probably going to be just more birds. Mm-hmm. That's fine. I like more birds.
Sure.
So there are also Australian birds or Oceania. So it will be New Zealand and other birds. Mm-hmm. Get my kiwi bird out there.
There you go.
So this was also on your list. You're number 3.
Yes, indeed. It's pretty much everything you said. I love the illustrations. It feels like you're looking through a nature book. Audubon Society illustrations. It really brings to life the bird watching aspect, and it feels, even though it's a competitive sort of drafting game and engine building, it has a calming aspect to it. The color palette and all of that. It is very, very solid. The only reason it's not like in the number 2 or number 1 position is I haven't played it enough to overshoot Reef Encounter or Mermies yet.
Yeah. Well, either way, hopefully these will give you all some good ideas. Alrighty, well, we had some, once again, web problems. Well, folks, we are working on the website to get these things fixed with our voting aspects here. So future Eric's going to have to tell us what the top 10 animal games are.
You called, past Tom? Hey, future Eric here, with the results of the People's Choice voting for Fauna games. Number 10 was Evolution, which I mentioned on my list. Number 9, Agricola, which certainly has lots of animals in it. I just didn't think it was as much of the focus. For whatever reason, I think of Agricola as a farming game. Also, all those cards that you build and professions that you have. Anyway. Number 8 was Everdell on the People's Choice. Certainly, that's one of those anthropomorphic style games that I left off my list. I know Tom enjoys Everdell. It just didn't make his list. Hey, That's My Fish was number 7, which I certainly considered for my pick. Number 6 was Barren Park, which made Tom's list. Number 5, Hare and Tortoise, which is a classic racing game. Number 4, Takinoko with the adorable panda. Number 3, Hive with the insects. I also considered this one for my list. Number 2, Zularetto. And number 1 was Wingspan.
Alrighty, that's it for another show. I'm excited about that. It was fun. It was entertaining. Join us next week where maybe you'll hear me again. We'll have to wait and see. I know. Don't forget to check out our website. Check out our Facebook group. We have a great Facebook group, folks. I highly moderate it to make sure that, you know, it's people who actually are going to talk about board games. And so it's a lot of fun, a very positive place to go and just talk and enjoy things about board games. So you should show up there.
You should.
And there are reviews galore coming out of the Dice Tower Video Network. Definitely keep an eye on that. So many games. Gen Con Online is coming up very soon. And I don't know how that will go, but I do know that lots of games are being released.
Yes.
When Eric gets back to his group, he's not going to know what to say. They're going to be like, so what's your pick, Eric? And he'll be like, and then he'll have a heart attack. It'll be a really sad story.
That would be very sad when I finally return to Game Group.
Or no, it wouldn't be that. It would be you. It wouldn't be that's too dark. It would be more something like you lose your voice.
Oh.
Right? And you're trying to say something, you're like, you know what, Bob, why don't you just pick?
It's like the Got Milk Aaron Burr commercial. Aaron Burr.
Yes, it's like, I just watched that today. So that's on my mind. Yes, that's what it would be. And I'd be like, Eric, we can't understand you. We're just going to play this game that we've already played many times. It's called Citadels. And I'd be like,
oh, boy.
Anyway, folks, we appreciate you all. We'll see you next time. Until then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 667, was recorded on July 16th, 2020. Mandy, Suzanne, and Tom join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I reach rebelliously for our top 10 games that start with the letter R. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Rob Searing, Mike Delisio, and Roy Kennedy. Our Cowboy Heel Spike rental services brought to you by Spur Lender. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at tom@Dicetower.com or eric@Dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower network, including Dukes of Dice, Four Corners of the Board, Board Gamers Anonymous, Boards and Swords, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, The Geek All-Stars, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and Dice Tower Tonight. Find your next favorite at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. I'm pretty sure when I do finally get back to my game group, it's not going to be my pick.
The keeping track is still going on?
Yeah, he just crosses out each week that we don't meet. He just puts dashes on everybody's name.
I don't know. I think it would be like just a game like, let's just all play together one big party game. I feel like that will happen in many
There
places. We'll see.
Yeah.